Africa, the cradle of humanity, the land of gold, of salt, of kings and empires, from the deserts of the Sahara to the jungles of the Congo, from the pyramids of Giza to the temples of Lalibela. She once stood proud and indivisible. But by the dawn of the 20th century, Africa had become something else, carved up, colonized, divided not by her people, but by foreign rulers who knew little of her soul. By the late 1800s, Africa was engulfed by the so-called Scramble for Africa. At the 1884 Berlin Conference, European powers sat around a table, slicing the continent like a cake, with no Africans present. Borders were drawn not by language, culture, or kinship, but by imperial convenience. Kingdoms were split. Enemies were fused into nations. The seeds of future conflict were planted with ink and greed. From Nigeria to Zimbabwe, from Sudan to Angola, Africa became a patchwork of colonies: British, French, Portuguese, Belgian, German, Italian. Her resources were stolen, her children enslaved or conscripted, her traditions suppressed. But Africa never stopped dreaming of freedom. Resistance burned quietly in mountains and valleys. Names like Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Jomo Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere and Nnamdi Azikiwe began to rise as whispers of Pan-African unity grew louder. Pan-Africanism was more than a slogan, it was a lifeline. It was the idea that Africans, wherever they were, on the continent or in the diaspora, were one people. It was born in the minds of freed slaves and black intellectuals in the Americas and Europe. W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, and later echoed by African leaders like Nkrumah, who declared, "Africa must unite." By the mid-20th century, decolonization swept through the continent like a storm. Ghana led the charge in 1957. Others followed: Nigeria in 1960, Kenya in 1963. One by one, the flags of empire were lowered and replaced with flags of hope. But independence brought new problems. With borders drawn by foreigners, many African nations inherited instability, ethnic tensions, fragile economies, and Cold War interference from both the West and the Soviet bloc. In May 1963, 32 independent African states gathered in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, under the leadership of Emperor Haile Selassie. For the first time in modern history, Africa spoke with one voice. The Organization of African Unity, OAU, was born. Its purpose? To promote unity, sovereignty and development, but also to end colonialism completely. Though some dreamed of a full political union, others feared losing their newly won independence to a centralized African state. So, the OAU settled for a loose association, more symbolic than structural. The dream of one Africa, a single federation, was deferred. But what if the dream had lived? What if in 1963 Africa had gone further? What if the continent had chosen political unity, not just solidarity? What if Africa had become one entity, the United States of Africa? Imagine it. Over 800 million people at the time, brought under one flag, one continental parliament, one currency, a shared military, shared borders, a continental highway from Cape Town to Cairo, one citizenship, a common passport, Pan-African economic planning, collective bargaining power against global powers, no more import dependence for food or fuel, oil from Nigeria and Libya, diamonds from Botswana, coffee from Ethiopia, cocoa from Ghana, uranium from Niger, all processed within Africa, profits reinvested in Africa, African technology firms, African pharmaceuticals, African satellites. One Central African Defense Force could have prevented civil wars, coups, and genocide. Rwanda, Biafra, Congo, South Sudan, Somalia, Angola. Instead of being pawns in the Cold War chessboard, a united Africa would be a player. Instead of 54 separate votes in the UN, often manipulated by foreign interests, one powerful African seat commanding attention. Imagine African languages being nurtured, studied, taught continent-wide. Swahili as a lingua franca, while preserving Yoruba, Amharic, Zulu, Wolof, Berber, Hausa, and hundreds more. Imagine African cinema broadcasting to billions in unified media platforms, a cultural renaissance, a rebirth of Timbuktu's intellectual legacy, of Ife's art, of Mapungubwe's commerce. Yes, there would have been trials, balancing power between large states like Nigeria and smaller ones like Lesotho, managing religious, ethnic, and linguistic diversity, curbing corruption, avoiding authoritarianism. But these challenges already existed, and fragmented, they became harder. What Africa lacked was not potential, but trust and timing. Colonial legacy encouraged division, and global powers feared a united Africa because a strong Africa could not be exploited. Today, the OAU has evolved into the African Union with 55 member states. There's an African passport in development, a continental free trade area launched in 2021. African satellites now orbit Earth, but fragmentation, corruption, debt traps, and foreign influence still haunt the continent. Young Africans now ask, is the dream of one Africa still possible? Or have we waited too long? The United States of America was once 13 warring colonies. China was once a fractured kingdom. Europe became a union after centuries of war. Africa has every right to dream and to unite. Perhaps Africa did not become one in 1963, but perhaps, like the baobab, the roots are growing deeper before the trunk rises tall. A time may yet come when borders fade and one voice thunders across the land. We are Africa, we are one, and the world must reckon with our unity. Dedicated to the dreamers of Pan-Africa, from Garvey to Nkrumah, from Sankara to the youth of today, Africa must unite. Kwame Nkrumah.